Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trev Foreman, and this is the Maurice Shiva gun. And the Shiva gun is being released on the heels of the popular Maurice Shiva, which is Maurice's do everything one board solution. Thruster, quad, single fin, 2+1. You can ride it all on the Shiva. And with so many people riding the Shiva, those surfers wanted to have a board that had similar feel to the Shiva, but was going to work better in pumping surf. You could ride the Shiva in well overhead waves, but when you're taking it into double overhead and bigger than that, outer breaks, stuff where there's a lot of water moving around and you just need a lot of length in the board to get around, that's when you have to step it up to either a semi-gun or a gun. And so Maurice wanted to make a board that was in line with the Shiva, had a very familiar feel, and a lot of the same design attributes that are in that board, but stretch it out, foil it out, rocker it out, and make it better for bigger surf. So that's where the idea from the Shiva gun came about. I mean, the biggest thing, it was just a light switch. A lot of the people on Shivas were going to, the only board that Maurice made in that next one up was the Proto, the Maurice Proto, and that has a really narrow, thin nose. And when you would go from a Shiva that has a flatter nose that's wider to the narrow nose that's thinner, it became a lot more critical of a board to surf. And so people wanted that familiar, stable feel of a little bit wider nose and a little bit flatter nose rocker. So that's where the Shiva gun came from. So talking a little bit about the differences between this board and the standard Shiva, obviously the similarities are that it has the Shiva fin setup, which is what's called a 4+1. So you've got your standard quad, so the board rides great as a quad. You can also ride it as a thruster with your thruster front fins here, and then FCS makes a Performer large or extra large with a connect system that just snaps right down into here. And so what that allows you to do is it allows you to adjust your back fin and your thruster setup. Further forward is going to make it more maneuverable. Further back is going to make it track better at speed and really big surf. You can also ride it as a 2+1. This is a 7/8, so on something like this, you'd be riding like a 6.5 back or a 7 back, and then you would ride small side bites in the front, and then you could also ride this board as a straight up single fin as well. A bunch of different ways that you can ride this board, but Shiva to Shiva gun, the fin setup is exactly the same. So you could transfer if you had a Shiva, you could transfer your fins right over to it as well. Talking about the differences. Obviously, one is going to be the length. You're going to ride your Shiva gun longer than your Shiva. How long do you ride it? Just depends on how big of a wave that you're trying to catch. The rails are more foiled, so this has more influence from the Proto as far as the rail volume. So you can see that the thickness is kind of from here to here, and then it really tapers down into a thinner rail profile. It still has that crisp edge running the entire length of the board. And that's something that's a little bit trippy. Like when you're sitting on the board, you're in the lineup and you're sitting on the board, and then you cock the board and you grab the rail and you go to flip it around. Even just grabbing the rail, you're like, man, that thing's got an edge on it all the way to the nose. And what that does, a couple different things is one, it activates that entire rail line of the board to help give you forward drive, which in bigger surf in critical situations is the make or break between making sections and not, which when you don't make sections in bigger surf, it really hurts. So that's a good thing for a board like this. The other thing is just how much faster it is. There's literally no water wrapping around the rail and holding the board. Everything is exiting the board really, really clean and efficiently. So it makes the drive makes the board faster, but also how cleanly the water and efficiently the water leaves the board also makes the board faster as well. Taking a look at the rocker, and I think the easiest way to do this is just step behind the lens with Ryan here, and we'll take a look at the rocker. You can see it still has that flat entry rocker up front, and that's what's going to make this board really easy to paddle around the lineup and catch those bombs when you want to get in on the wave of the day. You can see it's got a little bit more tail rocker than the Shiva, and it's got a narrower tail than the Shiva. The tail's more drawn out compared to the standard Shiva. And so this is the Shiva gun, and you're going to see these boards available, anywhere 6.6 up to about 8.0. is where they're gonna, really be in their sweet spot. You're gonna ride them, a few inches to as long as you want compared to your standard Shiva. It really just depends on, again, what kind of wave you're trying to paddle it into. If you ride it at the same volume as your Shiva, it's going to paddle into about the same size wave as your Shiva. It's just going to have more control on that wave at those higher speeds because of the thinner rails and the narrower tail and the additional tail rocker. And then as you start stepping up the length and the volume over your standard Shiva, that's going to allow you to catch bigger waves on the same reef, or move out to the second reef or the third reef wherever you're surfing, or the second sandbar or the third sandbar, and catch bigger waves. So that's a little bit of the theory behind the Shiva Gun. We've already put a few of these on the water already, about 6'8" up to 7'6", and getting really good feedback on the boards. One of them came from one of our customers, Trent Totoli, up in Long Island. He already rode his 6'10" out in Montauk, just absolutely loving it, like midwinter, like good size swell out in Montauk at the end of Long Island, and a lot of water moving, big playing field on the outside, and going up to that 6'10" really allows him to get around the lineup with ease. Throwing out a dimension set on this one, just to get your head around it. This is a 7'8", and it's 22 inches wide, 3¼ inches thick, and it has 57.77 liters of volume. And again, that 3¼ is just on the center of the board. It really tapers off quite a bit when you get to the rail. The Shiva Gun from Maurice Cole Surfboards. Any questions on this board or any of the other Maurice Coles, give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or look us up online, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.